Imagine standing in the marble corridors of ancient Rome, the smell of roasted bread thick in the air, echoing cheers from the Colosseum vibrating through the stone. Outside, the empire is rotting. Inflation is wild, corruption has eaten the Senate, and barbarians are closing in. But inside, the people are laughing, drinking, betting on gladiators, and praising the emperor for giving them free grain and spectacles. The empire was dying. The people were distracted. And that, my friend, was the point. The emperors of Rome had perfected a formula, a way to keep the masses silent, loyal, and blind while everything beneath them decayed. It was simple. Panem et Circenses, bread and circuses. Give them entertainment. Feed them enough to survive. Keep them emotionally full and intellectually empty. That ancient trick still echoes through history, from the fall of Rome to the fall of every empire since. Because the truth is brutal. When leaders can no longer provide prosperity, they provide distractions. Empires don't just fall with explosions and chaos. They fall quietly, in laughter, festivals, and social media trends. Before Rome burned, it was entertained to death. Before the French Revolution, the nobility hosted balls and theater for the public. Before the Soviet Union collapsed, citizens drowned in propaganda and escapism. And today, well, look around. Every headline is a circus. Every crisis feels like a show. Every debate is staged for clicks, not truth. And while we scroll, while we laugh, while we argue, the systems beneath us are cracking. And when inflation rises, you get concerts. When the economy struggles, you get celebrity scandals. When the debt ceiling trembles, you get viral challenges and billion-dollar sports seasons. Coincidence? Or evolution of an ancient formula? Governments don't need to censor anymore. They just need to flood you with noise until you stop noticing the silence. The Roman emperors used gladiators. Modern systems use media. Endless reels, outrage cycles, entertainment that feels urgent but means nothing. The formula hasn't died. It's just digitized. Human beings crave comfort more than truth. We want to feel okay, not aware. So when reality gets dark, leaders, media, and corporations know exactly what to do. Distract with emotion. Feed with dopamine. Entertain instead of educate. It's not always a conspiracy. Sometimes it's survival. Because keeping the masses happy is cheaper than keeping them wealthy, so they sell illusion, and we buy it every single day. Every empire that plays this game eventually runs out of bread, and the circus stops being fun. When the entertainment no longer numbs the pain, people wake up hungry, angry, and betrayed. And that's when history shifts from laughter to revolution. But how exactly did Rome perfect this trick? And how did bread and circus turn from a phrase into a full-blown political strategy? That's where we go next. It began with a lie, not the kind told in speeches, but the kind whispered into comfort. When the Roman treasury dried, when soldiers went unpaid and crops failed, the people started to ask questions, and questions to an unstable empire are dangerous. So the emperors gave answers that felt good, not ones that were true. They announced games, festivals, free rations. The crowd cheered. Bread was handed out from public granaries, and arenas roared for days. And in that thunder of applause, the empire found something priceless. Control through pleasure. People who are entertained stop revolting. People who are full stop fighting. And people who feel seen, even if through illusion, stop questioning. The emperors had discovered a political weapon far stronger than armies. Distraction. It didn't need swords or spies. It only needed attention. And once you had the people's attention, you could hide anything behind it. War losses, corruption, collapsing infrastructure, failing currency. The crowd would still clap, as long as the show continued. As centuries passed, this pattern refined itself. When Julius Caesar sought power, he staged parades, celebrating victories he exaggerated. When Nero's popularity fell, he built grand amphitheaters and filled them with endless performances. When crises deepened, the spectacles grew larger. It became a rule. The more desperate the empire, the grander the entertainment. This was no longer politics. It was theater. The empire itself became a stage where truth was scripted and the audience was the nation. And the frightening part? It worked. The senators knew the economy was failing. Merchants knew the coin's silver was diluted. But the people didn't care. They had bread, wine, and heroes to cheer for. Reality didn't matter when illusion was more beautiful. And so Rome danced while it died. Fast forward 2,000 years. The stages are bigger, the actors richer, and the distractions infinite. But the rhythm hasn't changed. Governments, corporations, even entire cultures now play the same ancient melody. Keep the population emotionally charged but intellectually quiet. Feed them comfort. Reward them with noise. Let them feel like participants when in truth they are only the audience. Social media turned the Colosseum into an app. Celebrities became the new gladiators. Political outrage became the new public games. And every headline, every viral scandal, every carefully staged debate serves the same function, to keep our minds spinning just fast enough to forget what truly matters. Meanwhile, beneath the glitter, The real stories remain buried. Debt crises, collapsing trust, wealth gaps widening like cracks in a dying wall, and the crowd still cheers because cheering feels easier than thinking. That is the brilliance and the curse of the bread and circus formula. It sells you distraction as freedom. It tells you you're informed when you're merely entertained. It convinces you the empire is fine because you're too busy watching the fireworks to see the fire. But every illusion has a breaking point, and every empire eventually faces the moment when even the greatest circus can drown out the sound of hunger. And when that moment comes, when the bread runs out and the laughter fades, the people finally see what was always there. The collapse didn't happen overnight. It was happening all along. We were just too distracted to notice. History doesn't repeat itself word for word. It repeats in rhythm, a pulse that beats just beneath the noise. Every civilization that reached its golden peak began humming the same tune right before it fell. The lyrics change, the instruments change, but the melody, it's always the same. Comfort before crisis, distraction before downfall. When Rome's empire finally cracked, it wasn't from invasion alone. It was from exhaustion. The economy had decayed under the weight of overexpansion. The military was stretched thin. The currency was worthless. Yet the people still believed in the illusion of greatness. Why? Because the games never stopped. The emperors knew if the citizens were watching the arena, they wouldn't be watching the treasury. The same happened centuries later in France. In the years before the French Revolution, bread prices soared, famine swept the countryside, and the monarchy drowned in debt. And what did the elite do? They threw masquerade balls, theater performances, fireworks over Versailles. The illusion of abundance, right before the eruption of rage. Marie Antoinette's rumored words. Let them eat cake? Might never have been said, but the sentiment was real. The ruling class genuinely believed entertainment could silence hunger, and for a time it worked. Until it didn't. Because you can only distract starving people for so long before they realize the bread is gone. The pattern returned again in Tsarist Russia. Lavish royal parades, national holidays, and extravagant theater continued even as peasants froze through brutal winters. Propaganda filled newspapers with patriotic celebrations, while the empire's foundation was already cracked. By the time the first revolutionaries marched, the stage lights were still on. But the audience had left the theater. They no longer wanted a show. They wanted justice. And then came the 20th century. The age of mass media, when the circus evolved from arenas and palaces into screens. In the 1930s, Germany's economy was in ruins. Hyperinflation destroyed savings overnight. The nation was desperate. And into that chaos walked a master of spectacle, a man who understood the psychology of crowds better than any emperor before him. Hitler didn't just rule with violence, he ruled with theater. Rallies choreographed like operas, symbols, slogans, music, uniform design. Every detail crafted to hypnotize a broken people into unity. It wasn't governance, it was performance. And for a time it worked, terrifyingly well. Even in the Soviet Union, during its slow decay, leaders filled television with grand parades, sports victories, and optimistic broadcasts about a future that no longer existed. Meanwhile, the stores were empty, the economy was dying, and morale was gone. The bread had run out, but the circus kept playing until the curtain finally fell. Each collapse tells the same truth. Distraction delays collapse but never prevents it. Empires mistake silence for stability. They think the absence of outrage means peace, when it actually means the people are numbed, not calm. And when that numbness wears off, reality hits like a hammer. But perhaps the most dangerous part of this pattern isn't éthique in history. It isn't how modern societies refuse to see themselves in it. We think we're different because our arenas glow with LED screens instead of torches. We think collapse can't touch us because our bread comes in plastic, not from granaries. We think information protects us. But information is the new illusion, the new sugar for the mind. History didn't bury the bread and circus formula. We inherited it, we upgraded it, we personalized it, and we call it freedom. Yet behind the laughter, the games, the content, the politics is theater, the same slow decay is happening. Only this time, it's global. The stage lights are brighter, the audience is bigger, and the stakes far higher than ever before. We live in the most distracted age in human history, an empire of attention where silence itself feels uncomfortable. We wake up and reach for the circus before we even open our eyes. The bread is digital now. The dopamine of likes, the comfort of belonging, the illusion of being informed. And the arenas? They fit in our hands. Every empire once built walls to protect its citizens. Today, we build feeds, infinite scrolls, endless noise, and we call it connection. Governments no longer need to hand out grain or organize parades. They've learned something far more powerful. If you give people constant stimulation, they'll govern themselves through distraction. When the economy falters, drop a celebrity scandal. When policies fail, amplify outrage. When people grow restless, flood them with entertainment until exhaustion feels like satisfaction. It's the same old formula, just wrapped in algorithms instead of marble. Look closely. When inflation spikes, luxury brands trend. When war breaks out, new seasons of distraction arrive right on schedule. When debt hits record highs, headlines shift to sports, gossip, or viral debates that keep us angry but powerless. Each crisis arrives with a companion, a spectacle designed to make it bearable. We laugh at the emperors of Rome, but we are no different. They built amphitheaters to pacify the crowd. We built platforms. They used gladiators to divide and thrill. We use opinions, outrage, and echo chambers. They gave the people bread. We get dopamine, comfort, and illusion. And just like them, we mistake noise for life. We think participation means power because we can post, comment, argue. But every second spent in the digital circus is one less spent noticing the real arena. The economy, the planet, the systems quietly crumbling beneath our entertainment. We are busy spectators of our own decline. The formula has evolved with precision. Now, distraction isn't an accident, it's the product. Economies thrive on attention. Politicians feed on outrage. Corporations profit from emotional fatigue. They don't need to hide corruption. They just need to make you care about something else louder. And it works because we crave comfort more than clarity. When the system shakes, the entertainment industry explodes with new content. When elections near, media outlets ignite wars of identity and distraction. When inequality widens, influencers rise to sell lifestyles that blur the pain. And beneath all of it, a quiet truth hums. The crowd must never go silent. Because silence is dangerous. Silence is when people start thinking. And thinking is the first step to seeing the illusion for what it is. Look at the world today. The endless debates, the constant outrage cycles, the emotional fatigue disguised as engagement. We are overstimulated but underinformed. We feel everything but understand nothing. And that is exactly how the bread and circus formula survives in the digital age, through comfort, chaos, and the illusion of control. We are Rome, but wireless. We are the crowd, but global. Our emperors don't wear crowns. They wear brands, microphones, and smiles. They promise change, unity, progress. But they deliver the same thing every empire offers before it falls. Distraction that feels like hope. And so we scroll, we binge, we debate, we laugh, while the real stage trembles beneath us. The bread tastes sweet, the circus shines bright, but the foundation cracks a little more every day. And when it finally breaks, we'll look around, stunned, and realize the same truth the Romans did 2,000 years ago. The empire didn't fall overnight. It was collapsing all along. We just mistook the entertainment for peace. One day, the music stops. The screens go dark, the laughter fades. And in that sudden quiet, the illusion shatters. History calls this moment collapse, but it feels more like awakening. People begin to look around, at the empty shelves, the broken promises, the systems that once felt invincible. They realized the empire wasn't protecting them, it was performing for them. And that performance bought time, not salvation. When the Romans finally ran out of grain, the crowds didn't cheer anymore. The arenas emptied, the chants turned to whispers, and the same people who once praised the emperor now demanded his head. Because hunger doesn't negotiate. And distraction loses its power, the instant reality becomes unbearable. Every age reaches this threshold, when pleasure can no longer hide decay, when the stories lose their color, when the circus no longer satisfies, when the people start remembering who they are without the noise. That moment is painful, but it's also sacred. It's the point where illusion ends and clarity begins, when citizens stop being spectators and start being participants again, when the audience remembers the stage was never theirs to begin with. Collapse, for all its terror, is not the end of civilization. It's the end of denial. It's the moment a society finally looks in the mirror and sees the cost of comfort. Maybe that is why history keeps repeating this pattern, because every generation has to rediscover what freedom actually means. Freedom isn't endless choice. It isn't entertainment or convenience. It's awareness. And awareness always hurts at first. We think collapse will come from outside, from war or markets or nature. But more often, it comes from within, when we trade awareness for amusement, truth for comfort, and agency for entertainment. That's how nations fade, not with a scream, but with applause. Yet even in that darkness, there's hope. Because after every fall, something honest is born. When the illusions crumble, what remains is real. The people, the lessons, the truth that was ignored. And from that truth, new civilizations rise, wiser, humbler, slower to laugh at the warnings of history. The bread and circus formula can distract, delay, and distort. But it cannot erase the human instinct to rebuild once the laughter dies. And that's the quiet miracle of collapse. The moment the curtain falls and the world starts again, stripped of lies, hungry for meaning. Maybe we are heading there now. Maybe we're already halfway through the performance. But every show ends eventually. And when it does, the question won't be who entertained us best. It'll be who stayed awake while everyone else was laughing. So here we are. The crowd, the stage, the empire reborn in pixels and glass. We tell ourselves this time is different, that technology makes us smarter, democracy keeps us safer, and awareness protects us from collapse. But the question lingers in the silence between scrolls. Are we truly awake, or just better entertained? The bread and circus formula isn't ancient history. It's alive, humming beneath every notification, every headline, every distraction that keeps you from noticing the cracks. Empires once gave bread to keep bellies full. Now they give dopamine to keep minds occupied. The ingredients changed. The recipe didn't. Look at the world. Inflation quietly erodes your savings while billion-dollar spectacles distract your eyes. Corruption goes viral only to vanish in the next news cycle. And while everyone argues over narratives, no one's asking who's writing the script. That is the genius of the modern circus. You don't need to silence the people if you can keep them performing in the show. We are all both the audience and the actors, liking, sharing, debating, defending illusions that keep the empire running. We don't fight censorship anymore. We drown in noise until truth feels optional. But what if you stepped out of the arena? What if you stopped clapping? What if, for one moment, you looked away from the spectacle and toward the structure itself, the economy, the leadership, the systems built on your distraction? You might see what they never wanted you to notice. The collapse isn't coming. It's already rehearsing in plain sight. And maybe, just maybe, awareness is the rebellion. Refusing to be entertained while the world burns might be the most radical act of this century. Because every empire in history has fallen the same way. Not from weakness, but from apathy. Not from invasion, but from indifference. You don't have to fix the world, you just have to stay awake in it. Remember the formula, recognize the pattern. When the next distraction arrives, and it will, ask yourself, what am I being kept from seeing? Who benefits from my amusement? And what happens when the circus ends? Because the show always ends. It has for every empire before us. The lights fade, the music stops, and all that remains are the echoes of laughter, and the quiet question of what we could have been if we had been so entertained. So, as the screen dims and this story fades, don't just scroll away. Pause, listen to the silence behind the noise, and decide, are you part of the audience or part of the awakening? So here we are, the crowd, the stage, the empire reborn in pixels and glass. We tell ourselves this time is different, that technology makes us smarter, democracy keeps us safer, and awareness protects us from collapse. But the question lingers in the silence between scrolls. Are we truly awake or just better entertained? The bread and circus formula isn't ancient history. It's alive, humming beneath every notification, every headline, every distraction that keeps you from noticing the cracks. Empires once gave bread to keep bellies full. Now they give dopamine to keep minds occupied. The ingredients changed. The recipe didn't. Look at the world. Inflation quietly erodes your savings while billion-dollar spectacles distract your eyes. Corruption goes viral only to vanish in the next news cycle. And while everyone argues over narratives, no one's asking who's writing the script. That is the genius of the modern circus. You don't need to silence the people if you can keep them performing in the show. We are all both the audience and the actors, liking, sharing, debating, defending illusions that keep the empire running. We don't fight censorship anymore. We drown in noise until truth feels optional. But what if you stepped out of the arena? What if you stopped clapping? What if, for one moment, you looked away from the spectacle and toward the structure itself, the economy, the leadership, the systems built on your distraction? You might see what they never wanted you to notice. The collapse isn't coming. It's already rehearsing in plain sight. And maybe, just maybe, awareness is the rebellion. Refusing to be entertained while the world burns might be the most radical act of this century. Because every empire in history has fallen the same way. Not from weakness, but from apathy. Not from invasion, but from indifference. You don't have to fix the world, you just have to stay awake in it. Remember the formula, recognize the pattern. When the next distraction arrives, and it will, ask yourself, what am I being kept from seeing? Who benefits from my amusement? And what happens when the circus ends? Because the show always ends. It has for every empire before us. The lights fade, the music stops, and all that remains are the echoes of laughter, and the quiet question of what we could have been if we had been so entertained. So, as the screen dims and this story fades, don't just scroll away. Pause, listen to the silence behind the noise, and decide, are you part of the audience or part of the awakening?